Robin, welcome to the Ultrahabits podcast. How are you going?
Oh, it's great to be here, Azid. I'm doing okay. Yeah, it's summer's coming here, so the sun's starting to come out, but it's still chilly compared to Australia.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I live in a very cold part of Australia. We live in a mountain range in Melbourne, and it gets very cold up here. We've kind of got our own ecosystem, so we've all been well and truly freezing for the past few weeks. And as a Californian boy, I've never really gotten used to it. So, uh, yeah, that's my take on the weather. But again, welcome to the show. I'm really, really happy to have you, Robin.
Thanks.
So, Robin, I came across you on LinkedIn, I don't know, a couple months ago, just out of nowhere. You started posting these really profound and insightful pieces, kind of commentating on what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine. What made you, how did you commence that process? Like, what gave you the idea to start actually talking about that, writing about that?
I think frustration more than anything. Frustration with the national media, with online media, with all sorts of media who spoon feed us small pieces of emotional information to try to sell product, but don't actually give us any news. And as a former soldier and as a person who studied military strategy for a long time and politics, I thought I would start putting out some very concise summaries on what I felt was actually happening and what was likely to happen. And over the last 15 months that the Ukraine war's been going on, I would say I've got about 90% of it fairly close to what did or has been happening. And I think an awful lot of people are now following me because they're relieved to see somebody talking some bloody common sense rather than trying to sell somebody's panty liners online, between bouts of you should be frightened, you should be upset, you should be scared, are we going to have a nuclear war, etc., etc. And I was trying to bring some reasonable common sense, as a lot of other military commentators have done too. So, that's pretty much it. Frustration motivated me to start to put it out there. And, it's created a fairly large following. And I try to write on LinkedIn predominantly because I don't want to be accused of monetizing the war. And I know a lot of people do, and they need to do that for other good reasons. But I wanted to stay outside and above perhaps that particular profile. I wanted to be able to say that I didn't want people to have the option of saying you're bought and paid for. So be completely objective about the subject matter and trying to be honest about it rather than sell something.
Did you think you would be so popular or become so popular?
Well, I didn't really have an idea of what popular was. A few people, I've got 66,000 followers and about 500,000 to 1 million people read my stuff every week. And people were coming back to me and saying, my God, that's an awful lot of people, considering you're not actually podcasting, you're not speaking, you're actually writing. They keep encouraging me to do that. And maybe that's in the game plan in the near future. But right now, I didn't understand what a large number was. I just wanted to speak up. That's I used to be called the veterans gobshite when I was fronting the Northern Ireland Veterans Campaign here, because there's so many people in the world that have the same feelings as me, but cannot articulate them well enough. So they're scared to speak up, or they get cancelled, they get pressed, they get closed down online, they get trolled. And I've had experience of that over the last 15 months as well, where I get lots of major attacks on my webpage, which the security defends against quite well, and I get an awful lot of abuse. But I tend to disinfect my pages every few hours. The answer is to block and delete, not to engage people who are deliberately and maliciously trolling you.
You seem like the kind of man to me that it wouldn't really affect so much.
Well, it's great to have the words to defend yourself. I was teaching at a children's school a couple of months back now, 9 and 10-year-olds, and I was explaining to them that words are the most powerful thing we have, and when we run out of words, that's when we get frustrated and angry. And although we still sometimes in life need to defend ourselves physically, it's words that give us the greatest amount of power.
Were you always so well versed with words, Robin? Because I know that you are a poet, you're a writer, and I think the way that you write has no doubt been part of what's created so much impact. I mean, there's a lot of people that can write or speak about something, but I think it's how you do it. Like, have you always had this ability with words, or is this something that you've developed?
I think as a soldier, I was accused of being mouthy. I got a few punches in the face for that, quite a few. I've always been opinionated, strongly opinionated, and had a strong core values about right and wrong, and refused to be silenced, refused to allow someone to take away my voice. But when I was, how old was I? 54, I broke my neck. And up until then, I'd spent 20 years teaching martial arts. And I went off to university to do English literature with creative writing. And when I was 56, I went off to uni, and graduated when I was 59, which improved my skills at communication, improved my ability to write. It gave me a greater vocabulary. It gave me a better understanding of what superfluous adjectives were. And so, a bit like when you're at home and you want to put some shelves up, and it takes you 2 days, and you take them down and realign them and put them back up again, and a carpenter could do it in 10 minutes. Once I'd been to university, I think I started to become a carpenter of words.
It's a very it's a very good way of putting it. Speaking of words, your book, it's called Fighting Scared. How did you choose the title for that, Rob?
Yeah, Fighting Scared is my first book and my autobiography. That's my life story. And me and my wife chose the name of the book because originally, just as a draft, it was called "Can't Crack Me, I'm a Rubber Duck." But that was just a stand-in till we figured something out. And we sat at a table having dinner, and she said, "Well, tell me, what's the book actually about?" And I said, "Well, there's an awful lot of fighting in it for a start." And she said, "Well, why were you fighting?" And I said, "I was so scared of getting hurt." Well, I was 19, 2 drunken soldiers came in and almost beat me to death while I was in my bed one night. And I swore that nobody would ever do that to me again. And for a period after that, I was quite psychotic in many ways. Anybody was looking for it, I was going to give them it first. And that was out of fear, not out of being tough, not out of being a hard man. Although I'd been a soldier since the age of 15, it was predominantly a response to abuse and making sure that nobody ever had that advantage over me again. So that's where we got the name Fighting Scared from. I mean, my wife was very much my editor when I wrote it. I wrote the first few chapters, and she took a look at it, and she said, "Well," she said, "I've had a look, and this is shit." And she gradually coached me into putting emotion into words, emotion onto the paper, and exploring the real feelings that created the person that I became. So yeah, without her, she had a huge input into my writing. And then, I've written 4 books since I left uni as well.
Who was the kid prior to joining the military at 15, Robin? Like, give us some flavor on how you grew up, how you came up.
I was born in 1957. My mother was 17 years old, and my father was in prison. Over the first 7 years of my life, I never had a father. And they divorced while he was in prison. And then she married a man called Jeffrey Horsfall when I was 8 years old. and he had no experience of kids, and I had no experience of fathers. So we clashed. And his method of disciplining me was to beat me into silence. And when you beat somebody into silence, you take away their voice. You take away their ability to make friends, to smile, to laugh. You take away their confidence. And as a result of that, I became quite a distant and sullen young person who struggled for a long, long time to make friends. When I was 13 or 14, I started to fail at school because my home life was falling apart. There was another divorce on the horizon. And to run away from it in many ways, I volunteered to join the army at the age of 14. But the school leaving age was 15 in 1972. And in 1972, I successfully became a full-time soldier in the British Army. I wasn't allowed to go into combat situations until I was 17 and a half. But so for 2 years and 3 months, I was at what was called the Infantry Junior Leaders Battalion, which was a military college for young men in a similar circumstances to myself. And it was a wonderful foundation to build on.
Would you say that the Army saved your life at that point in time? Like, what would have become of Robin if you hadn't gone into the Army? Let's just hypothesize.
No one knows, but I was definitely on the path to failure. We come to places in our life where people can misdirect us or direct us, and especially when you're young and you take a wrong choice at a wrong turn, and that decides the rest of your life. I took control of my life at the age of 14 and without prompting decided that this is what I was going to do. And I signed those bits of paper giving people authority over me. And they taught me a great deal. And the thing they taught me most was how to teach. The last 6 months of my junior service was teaching practice. And that was a thrill. Bear in mind, I've already said that I'd had my voice taken away from me. And here was the opportunity to stand in front of a group, to impart knowledge and to impart opinions as well. And that stayed with me for the rest of my life. I've always had a vocation to teach, as I said, impart knowledge to others and try to make it valuable and worthy and important. And that's what I do in my writing as well. It's another way of having a voice.
Do you think by teaching it also makes us more accountable?
Could you repeat that, please?
Do you think by having to teach or teaching something, we ourselves become more accountable?
I think when we teach something, we begin to learn it properly. When we take on the responsibility of teaching something, we actually start to study the subject properly because we have a responsibility to get it right to a class. I mentioned that I was teaching at a local school and I was up introducing them to poetry. And it was a thrill because going away from that class afterwards, I started to say, well, you've got to look into this. You've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to have a better understanding of the structures of poems in order to impart it to a class. So you go away and you learn when you teach. It's not so much that the class teach you as they force you out of responsibility to do your job properly. And the best teachers in the world are singers and dancers. And I don't mean singers and dancers on the stage. I mean the actual practice is to entertain, is to stand there and here I am. What we're going to do today is we're going to do physics. Oh yeah, great physics. Oh, I hate physics. Who wants to fly a helicopter? And then we start to talk about aerodynamics. Then we start to talk about vectors. And we talk about drag and everything else. And physics suddenly becomes flying helicopters. That's good teaching. The best subjects, the best things you were at school were the result of the best teachers you had. When you didn't like a subject, it's usually because you're a bad teacher. Not because the subject was bad or you weren't any good at it. But just because you didn't have a good teacher.
How did you take to kind of male influences in the Army? Like, did you find that you struggled with authority or like, were you hungry for, like, I mean, you know, I have a son, I talk to lots of men and, you know, the theory is that young boys in particular, they crave structure, whether they realize it or not. Like, did you find that you took well to structure? You rebelled at first? Like, how did that male influence within the Army influence you? And did you take to that immediately?
Well, I had a huge problem with authority figures because of the abuse that I had as a child from my only male role model. So that was a struggle. There was a struggle to build up confidence and trust in certain people, because there's an awful lot of people who are given authority over you that aren't leaders, and they're not even good managers. But there's a huge difference between the two. So people are given rank, they're given a job of instructing you, and an awful lot of it was founded on a bullying and stupidity. And so I struggled with that. A lot of people copied it. So that was difficult too. But I knew it was what I wanted to do at the time. I didn't have a choice. The option of going home from the army wasn't really a choice. There was nothing to go home to. So I was going to stay there. But there was a moment after about the first 6 weeks where I still wasn't 16, and I was struggling to make friends, struggling to cope, struggling to blend and mix in with my peers. And so I retreated down the other end of the room and sat with another lad, and we were just polishing our boot. And he just leaned over and said, don't let it get to you. You're not as bad as they make out you are, Robin. And it was just enough to keep me on at the time when there was a crisis. A few words from the right person at the right time can mean an awful lot to people who are young. He was, I'm still friends with him now, 50 years later. So, yeah, you mentioned leaders. People confuse leadership with management. They confuse leadership with authority. I mean, just because somebody's in charge of you doesn't make them a leader. And just because somebody's managing you doesn't make them a leader. I mean, a leader is somebody lead. It means show people the way. It's a guide. It's going in front. It's helping. It's not just telling people what to do with punishment and reward. Leadership's about inspiring people. It's about them wanting to do what you want. It's about setting an example, having the courage to set that example, and having strong core values that people aspire to. If you've got that, then you've got leadership, and you've got the foundations of leadership. But authority doesn't make you a leader.
At what point in your journey did you decide that you were going to kind of shoot for the heights of elite soldiering? Like, at what point did you realize that you wanted to really push yourself to, become SAS and really give it a go in terms of making it a solid career?
But it wasn't really. I don't think there are some people who go through life giving themselves targets, saying, right, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to do that, and they do. Great. There's an awful lot of people that do that and then feel they failed because they haven't. Well, I was young. I didn't do that. I just took the next step that life offered me. But I've always volunteered. I always give it a go. Getting into the parachute regiment, getting into the infantry junior leaders battalion was a step up. You were already selected to be in a particularly above average group. Getting into the parachute regiment, again, a particularly above average group. But I got into a guided missile section, which was independent with a slightly lower level of discipline, but a very high standard of soldiering. They disbanded when a new missile came in, and they were going to send me back to a rifle company in the 1st Battalion, the parachute regiment. Well, I'd come from the 2nd, and I wanted to go back to the 2nd, but they wouldn't let me. So just to cock a snoot at authority, I, at the age of 21, I went and filled in the forms to volunteer to go to the SAS, because I knew they couldn't stop me doing that if I volunteered. They were forcing me to go somewhere where I didn't want to go. And so it was just being rebellious. And there was a Yorkshireman in the back of the battalion clerk's office where I was asking for the forms. And he said, I don't know why you want to do that. He said, you're far too young. You've got to be about 27 to do that. You'll be back with your tail between your legs. And he was wrong. I was one of the youngest guys to get into the SAS. I failed but the first attempt, but they kept me on, and I had another go 6 months later, 4 months later actually, and passed the second attempt. So it wasn't really a direction that I was planning. It was a rebellious act against those people in charge of me that wouldn't allow me to go back to my old battalion.
Thinking back to that time in your life, Robin, like what was the most difficult part of the process in terms of becoming an SAS? Like when you reflect back, like was there anything that stands out to you is one of the more difficult things that you had to do to become an SAS?
Well, it's nothing like the rubbish that people see on television for a start. If they made a sensible television about SAS selection, it would probably be a very boring documentary because nobody pushes you, nobody shouts at you, nobody cajoles you. You are already expected to be an experienced soldier, and by the age I was 21, I already had 6 years of soldiering under my belt, which is an awful lot of time. SAS selection in the UK is a year long. It's not just a case of going up some mountains, doing some marches at certain speed to a certain weight, and that's the end of it. You do the first 4 weeks in the Welsh mountains where I live, and the last week is called test week, and it's actually 5 days. And that 5 days, you go out alone with increasing amounts of weight, and you cover increasing distances. And it's the whole 5 days is the equivalent of 5 marathons over 5 days over the mountains alone with weight on your back, with the final march being 40 miles. If you successfully complete that, and about 10 to 12% do, you then go on to continuation training, which is usually in the jungle. And you live in the jungle in 4 or 5 main groups, and everything in the jungle wants to eat you. And I don't mean the big animals, I mean the little things, the mosquitoes, the leeches, the ticks, the bugs, the ants, everything like that. And you live in that environment, you work in that environment for another 4 weeks. And then you come back and do a combat survival instructors course. And at the end of that, after the last week of that, you're thrown out on the ground with a partner, and you're chased by 1,500 men for the next 5 days. And you try to live off the land. You've got no food. All you've got is a great coat, a button compass, and a paper map, a sketch map. And if you pass that, you're then sent to do your parachuting if you're not already a paratrooper. And if you pass that, you're given your cat badge and you join your squadron. And then you're on probation for 6 months. And in that 6 months, you have to pass a personal skill and a troop skill. And my personal skill was paramedicine, and my troop skill was mountain climbing. So, and at the end of exactly 12 months, you're then fully qualified and given special forces pay. And then 2 years later, you're assessed again.
It's a full-on process.
Failure is not an option. Well, it should be, because if you want to improve at something and get better at it, then you must be able to make mistakes in training. And sometimes the standards were so high that they suppressed certain developments that would have been beneficial to the Special Air Service. If you set your standards too high, then you end up losing people that simply won't make that same mistake again.
So you kind of breed a level of perfectionism. And
yeah, perfectionism's a mistake, especially in leadership and in management. If you set your standards so high that nobody can get it wrong, then they can't get it right. One of my old sergeants say you've got to get it wrong before you get it right. And that's the truth. You do in training, so that when it comes to the real thing, you're mostly going to get it right.
In the real thing, in those scenarios, because I know that you were involved in quite a lot of combat scenarios, did you find that you quite easily reverted to your training? Like, was that standard of training so high that you were able to revert to that training? And were you literally scared? Like your book title, like, were you scared? Were you fighting scared during most of these scenarios?
The prospect of the worst part of violence is the anticipation of it. So you have to sit and wait for an operation. That's when the worm of fear can eat into your brain. When you are actually engaged and busy and working at being a soldier in a frightening situation, then your training does take over. And your training was to make you familiar with fear. And it's the familiarity with fear that allows you to operate in a dangerous environment. I'll give you an example of somebody who drives a Formula One racing car at 220 miles an hour around a sharp bend. And he's familiar with the vehicle. He's familiar with the equipment. He's familiar with the speed, and he knows what he's doing. And so the fear or the anxiety is there, but it's controlled. Exaggerated when something goes wrong, but even when something goes wrong, he's had the training to deal with that, to take it off at the right place, to feed it sideways into a wall, to lay the motorbike over, and so on. And it's the same with the soldier. You're put in situations which you're prepared for. So, yes, you do experience fear, but most fear comes through when something unexpected happens and you have to think quickly. And then it's absolutely vital that you can control your thinking process and decide what to do in those critical moments in order to stay alive.
Do you think certain people have a greater capacity for it, Robin, or everyone and anyone can be trained to manage fear?
No, I think it takes a certain type of person. If you take really, really nice kids and put them all in the army, they're not going to do as well as really bad kids. Really bad kids who've had a tough upbringing and have been educated in bullying and the processes of life and the hardships and the sufferings that go with difficult situations are going to be better prepared for violence. There are a number of our young people who grow up in really good, decent families. They have strong moral foundations. They never experience unprovoked and unreasonable violence. And the day it does happen to them, they go into shock because they've never been prepared for it. And so they freeze, or they run, or they cry. And that's simply the process of development that they've gone through in their life. Whereas if you come off the back streets of a major city where you've had to fight just to get down the road at night sometimes, or you've had to stand up yourself to exist in a peer group, in a community, then the chances are you're going to have a far stronger, a far better chance of being capable as a soldier.
I read in your story that during your time in the military, you also had to deal with, you hinted to it earlier in our conversation, leaders that didn't necessarily have the best interest of the men. Like, can you walk us through that? Like, what kind of crazy people on your side have you had to deal with in terms of, from a leadership perspective?
Well, I'll give you one example. We were during the Falklands War in 1982. My squadron was tasked to fly into Argentina to destroy the Super Étendard jets that were sinking our capital ships in the South Atlantic. And it was a one-way mission. We were going down there to destroy the jets on the runway, and there was no return journey. So we were either killed or captured. And that was an acceptable mission as far as we were concerned. It was what we were trained to do. However, as we got halfway there and the mission was delayed, and so we had more time to think about it, and we we wanted a different route into the target. And so we tried to persuade the brigadier that had prepared and made this his plan to adjust it so that we had a better chance of survival, a better chance of getting to the target, and perhaps even a better chance of coming home afterwards. But he wouldn't have any of it. And as the war went on and we waited, it became apparent that there was only one air-portable Exocet missile left on a jet in Argentina. But our brigadier still was determined to get us to go and do this mission. And to most of us, that seemed like ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It was going to be a waste of a squadron. There was one missile left that could possibly have sank one of our aircraft carriers. The paras, the Marines, the Guards, the Navy, the Air Force were winning the war on the mainland, but he still wanted the mission to go ahead here. And so we pretty much, we got pretty upset about that, because from our point of view, he just wanted this mission for his own glory and the glory of the regiment, not for any strategic or tactical or operational reasons. And when we got back to the United Kingdom and we had a debrief on the mission, he tried to accuse us of being cowards because we didn't want to do it his way. And we started to laugh, and we laughed at him until he got off the stage. And that was our revenge on his particular desire to send us to our death. Yeah. So we were prepared to go, prepared to do the mission, but not without a damn good reason.
Excuse my ignorance on this, Robin. Like, in terms of first world kind of democracies, let's say like Australia, the United States, or Britain, unless there's an imminent threat, like, is that convention that soldiers would get sent somewhere without a probability that they would come back? Like, is that an acceptable risk? Generally?
Yeah, it is. It is, especially the paratroopers and special forces. When you're at war, it's your job to die for your country. If anybody thinks they're going to be a soldier just for the purpose of earning a trade, then they're wrong. The first job of a soldier is to fight. And if you won't fight, then you're wasting your time being. You should have the uniform on in the first place. And sometimes you're given jobs and missions, and there's a very strong chance that you will die. And you have to tell yourself, as a result of that risk, as a result of your death, a larger number of people will actually survive and benefit by that. You will win your war. Your country will be safe. You will send the Russians back from Ukraine. You will keep the Nazis out of Europe. You will, those are acceptable risks. And I sometimes think that soldiers aren't told that well enough. They are recruited. It should be made clear to you. You want to be a soldier. Can you fight? Will you fight? And you understand that there's a chance that you will die for your people. I don't like the word nation. I like the word benefit.
You talk about having to fight against your own inner demons, Robin.
And
what were some of those inner demons?
I think not understanding my stepfather and why he was the way he was. When he died, I had his body there. I'm just pointing to my wife at the moment. Postman's come. Yeah. And he, we became friends in later life, very much so. But I sat down next to his body after he died, and I said, "Why were you such a bastard to me when I was young?" And I swear a voice came into my head saying, "I was only doing the best I could, the only way I knew." And that was the first time I really understood him in many ways. And I think there's an awful lot of fathers and parents that do exactly the same. their children might perceive them as being brutal, very too over strict or overprotective, or but sometimes they are bad people, but most of the time they just don't know an alternative way of getting you to do what they want you to do. Nobody teaches you to be mum and dad.
Are you a father?
Except your own parents.
Are you a father, Robin? Are you a dad?
Oh my goodness, I'm a great grandfather.
Right.
I've got 5 children, 10 grandchildren, and 5 great grandchildren. And I'm the oldest in the family now, including my brothers or sisters. So everyone expects me to have the answers or the money.
You're the patriarch, Robin. How's you found, like, your history, trauma, the good, bad, and the ugly, like reflecting on how you parented and now as a grandparent, like how have you brought that all together? Has it been messy? What's that whole situation look like, man?
Well, I think the first thing was that I met Heather when I was on SAS selection, so I was 21 and she was 20. And I was that nasty, aggressive lone wolf who hated the world.
Yeah.
And she got into the cage and tickled my ears, She gave me a great deal of confidence, taught me how to love, taught me how to show my emotions, gave me back my humanity, and then later she gave me children. And she taught me how to love those children. She taught me how to care for them. Over my oldest son, Alex, was born 4 days after the surrender in the Falklands. And so he's 43 years old now. And when he was a boy, I smacked his ass twice. And I think one of those times was by accident. I was fooling around. With Oliver, again twice, and with my daughters, never. And I learned to control people that I care deeply about with disappointment rather than with anger. And that's a great value. And there's a piece in the Bible that says, there's a phrase, he turned his face from him. And that's very useful when it comes to dealing with people that disappoint you. Just simply turning your face from them and refusing to communicate and showing your disappointment and showing how unhappy you are without getting angry or aggressive or violent. So, yeah, they've all grown up to be pretty good kids, and they're all doing pretty well. I think as a result of mine and Heather's unity and her input and guidance more than anything else.
That's beautiful, man. That's amazing. And I take on board what you just said about, using expressions rather than anger. I tend to do that with my son. And, when I have that moment of realization, and don't just react in anger, I might look away or I might give him a look, and I can see it impacts him much more than if I just start shouting at him, and he just starts shouting back, and it just becomes lost. And then my wife starts yelling at me, and then the whole situation ends up pear-shaped. So talk about your journey with karate, Robin. Like, when did that journey start?
Well, I was 23. I was by then I was a fully qualified and integrated Special Forces soldier. But everything we were doing was with guns, pistols, undercover, big guns, small guns, wheel guns, you name it, guns. And we weren't doing any armed combat. So me and my best friend at the time, Bob Curry, we went and joined the local karate club downtown. And it immediately gave me something, because although I could fight and I could be violent and I could be vicious, I didn't have any real fighting skills apart from aggression. And as the studies went on, and as I became more capable, I found that my peers started to treat me differently because I was actually becoming a more reasonable and calmer person as well as a result of my martial arts. If you train somebody to be disciplined and strong, that discipline spreads into other parts of their life. And also, a strong, disciplined, capable person will often be a kinder person because he doesn't have something to prove. He's confident in himself. He's confident in his abilities. And it improved me in many, many ways. And I continued to do it for nearly 30 years until I broke my neck. It became my life, and I loved it. And it actually helped me out of an awful lot of situations that could have been very, very damaging or violent, simply because I was capable of remaining calm and moving away from a situation or handling it or making the other person realize without violence that they'd made a mistake and they'd come up against the wrong person. So, yeah, there was an awful lot of benefits to it. And then I started to teach it to kids and try to impart that same thing to them, not about winning games or winning competitions or trophies or medals, but about good manners, self-discipline, respect for parents and teachers, and personal development. And I still believe that very, very strongly, which is the real core of martial arts. It's not a sport, it's an art. It's about personal development.
So all these things, Robin, soldiering, poetry, martial arts, like, how have they come together in terms of what you see your mission, your personal mission, or your purpose to be? Like, what lights your fire? Like, I know that you do lots of different things. You write, you teach. What is it that really gets you out of bed?
What lights my fire is bullies, people who bully, intimidate, isolate, and humiliate other human beings. People who have evil core values, because you can have bad core values as well as good ones. Be specific. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump get me out of bed in the morning because I hate both of them equally with a venom. And I watch the propaganda and the lies and the abuse of human beings and the misleading of ignorant human beings as well. Not stupid, but people who don't know any better. And how that's dangerous. And I look back at history and see how people have done exactly the same thing in history. Adolf Hitler being one example, surrounded by his group of Nazi sycophants as well. Joseph Stalin being another one. And the majority of us are moderate. The majority of people are moderates. We're not woke and we're not practicing. We're the silent majority in the middle, but we're overwhelmed that our voices are taken from us by these extremists all the time. And so that gets me out of bed. That gets me upset. That gets me annoyed. That gets me wanting to speak out and bang the table and say, you will not silence me. You will not tell me to be quiet. You will not make me feel foolish. I will keep banging this drum. And regardless of what you do, you can attack my web pages, you can attack my social media outlets. And in cases, sometimes they've even attacked my personal family, close family. But I will not be quiet, because the day the moderate moral majority stop being pain, stop having a voice, that's the time that the crazies take over. And we've been getting pretty close in the last 5 or 6 years to the crazies taking over. And it's about time we all started standing up and speaking about it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Robin. I feel like I like that was well put. And I feel like it's almost, we're living in a world of polarities and no one knows how to be sensible anymore. No one knows how to have a conversation, a debate. It's almost like we have to move to an extreme, and the middle ground is lost. And I don't know why that's happened or how that's happened, but it seems to be happening for whatever reason. Yeah. So, would you ever get into politics?
Yeah, I was on the fringe of politics when I was running the Northern Ireland Veterans Campaign, which was to stop the vexatious prosecution of soldiers who had been previously investigated 50 years ago. And I found that it wasn't the sabres of my enemies, it was the daggers of my friends that were the biggest problem. Politics is a nasty game of popularity and lies, and it's very, very difficult to hold on to the truth. And after 6 years, my health was suffering as a result of it, and I had to step aside and let somebody else take on the burden. But I think we managed to we've got a bill going through Parliament now called the Northern Ireland Legacy Bill, which will achieve what we set out to achieve. But that was just one thing. We get politicians who begin with high moral objectives, and then they get into the system and they get brutalized by the system, and they get brutalized by the people as well. So as soon as you become a politician, everybody thinks that you're fair game for them to cast their abuse at. And so we end up with the toughest, meanest sons of bitches in our leadership group because of our own behavior, because we're constantly attacking them and looking for faults in them and tearing them to pieces. And so I guess in some ways we get what we deserve. Because we're not prepared to put somebody who's decent, humanitarian and moderate up there and support them when they make a mistake. And as soon as you get on that pedestal of politics, everybody thinks it's their job to kick you off it. And that's one of the great difficulties we have with democracy at the moment, is that we're constantly attack and abuse the people that we elect to do a good job for us. It's sad.
Robert, I wanted to ask you a question, particularly around your commentary with Russia and Putin. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, let's say in 2 to 3 years, do you think all will be forgotten? Kind of his movement will subside and, because he's a powerful man, he'll kind of slowly move into the shadows but get away with it. Like, do you think there will be a day of reckoning for him?
I think he's already having his day of reckoning. He's already made the biggest error of his entire life. He thought he would march into Ukraine the same way that Russia previously Soviet Union marched into Hungary and Czechoslovakia. And he didn't anticipate the Ukrainian people having the will and the strength and the courage to fight back. They'd prepared for it to a degree as well. He didn't understand the power of democracy. He'd been allowed to walk into Crimea and get away with it, and he thought he was going to do the same thing again. A big mistake, really, in Ukraine was that the world allowed him to get away with walking into Crimea in the first place. But that's in hindsight. I'm not a prophet, so what's going to happen will probably surprise all of us. But I can be sure that Ukraine, with continued Western support, will defeat Russia and will defeat Vladimir Putin. What the Russian people do with Vladimir Putin is up to them. Whether they destroy him, take him down, move him sideways, or submit to him in some strange form again in the future, nobody knows. But Ukraine will win. Ukraine will push to a point where they take back their lands and then negotiate a settlement. But I also think that when they've done that, they must become part of NATO and become a fixed member of the European Union. Because with that unity and that cover and that protection and that deterrent factor, you will ensure that nobody like Putin, nobody who follows Putin, will have the ability to try it again. And that's the thing, because most wars are prevented by strength. They're not prevented by diplomacy and deterrence. They are by diplomacy that They're deflected and prevented by strength, and we must remain strong. The biggest weakness we've made in Europe in the last 30 years is reducing our level of strength and military defensive capabilities to the point where somebody believed that they could push and get away with it. And now we are using our treasure, and Ukraine are using their blood and courage to, as a result of that lack of foresight and lack of understanding of history.
Brilliantly put there, Robin. Before we land this plane, I always ask a personal question around habits. So, Robin, in your years of soldiering and karate and martial arts and everything that you've done in terms of your personal development, are there any one or two habits that you kind of embrace on a daily basis that are really important to you?
PBF, PFB, force of breath. A lot of hot air blows cold. One of the things I love about writing as opposed to speaking is you can read what you've written and go over it and look for the errors and look for the mistakes. But once you open this in public, as I'm doing now, you said it and somebody can take it and they can deliberately misinterpret it or use it against you. The other thing is, when you screw up, when you make a mistake, not to be frightened to say, yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, I've changed my mind. I changed my mind about Brexit, believe it or not. I was persuaded that it was a good idea. Given the choice now, I would say, yeah, my God, I was wrong. Well, I didn't have enough information. I didn't understand the full picture. The politicians in charge were failing to give me an education about what the whole prospect of that change were. And so, pause for breath, take your time, think about what you're going to say, and if you do get something wrong, turn around and say, yeah, I got it wrong. There's nothing wrong with getting something wrong. But never apologize when you're right.
Yeah. My wife does, she won't apologize if she's wrong, and she certainly won't apologize if she's right. So I'm used to that. So that's all good. I've learned to live with that one. So look, I really appreciate your time, Robin, on the show. Where can our audience learn more about you?
Yeah, the easy way is to go to robinhorsfall.com. There's no E in Horsfall, Horsfall. And there's an awful lot about me there. You can just put my name in Google, and you can find my books on my webpage if you're interested in that. And I also put out signed pictures from the Iranian Embassy siege that I was part of in 1980 when we rescued 19 hostages from 6 terrorists. So it's all there if you want more. And if you want a large part of my life story, go to look up Fighting Scared.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.